Hello and welcome to Nikolai's genetics lessons, and today's problem is in some plants. Scientists observed two varieties with two types of leaf color, one with red leaves and the other one with yellow leaves. Each variety bred through and produced red and yellow leafed plants in successive generations. When red and yellow varieties were crossed, the offspring were found to have red-colored leaves in F1 generation, but in F2 generation 12 were red, 3 yellow and 1 green. Explain observed ratios. Even if you are very good at math, this probably wouldn't help you today, but if you watch my last 4 or 5 videos in which I explain how to solve this kind of problems with unusual phenotypic ratio as a result of cross, you might try to solve this problem, especially those people who watch my video in which I explain ratios from the point of view of natural plant color and accessory pigment. So in this type of problem we see unusual ratio as 12 to 3 and to 1, and especially we start with just two colors, and in the F2 generation we have 3 colors. So some of you might think that we have here 3 genes. For example, gene A would be dominant over the gene B, and gene B would be dominant over the gene C. But this is not the case, and some of you who watch my previous videos would instantly see here that this trait is under control of 2 genes, because 12 plus 3 plus 1 would give us 16. And people who watch my video already know that classical dihybrid cross would produce following ratios as 9 to 3 to 3 and to 1. And we also may have different modifications of this dihybrid cross, as for example 15 to 1, or 9 to 7, or 13 to 3, or say 1 to 4 to 6 to 4 and to 1. All these ratios I explained in my previous videos, but what makes them form the same category would be the number. For example, if we add all these numbers, we are going to get 16, we are going to get 16 here, 16 here, 16 here, and 16 here. So this gives us information that this time our ratio, which is 12 to 3 to 1, also falls into this category. And this gives us information that this trait under the control of 2 genes and not of the 3 genes. And here we also have dominance. One gene would be dominant over the other one, and in order to explain this problem I will need to use some photos. These are photos of the tea plant, and as you see, tea plant can be found in different colors, and I have to tell you that natural color is green. Of course, that's why most our plants that we see around us are green, because this is natural color of the chlorophyll. And for example, we see here yellow plant. It is due to presence of the accessory yellow pigment. And here we see plant, also this is tea plant, not the tea plant that we use to drink as beverage, but this is tea plant, tea. So on this picture we see this plant as red, and this is due to presence of the red accessory pigment. So once again, this is not yellow chlorophyll, and this is not a red type of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is always green, and this is just accessory pigments. Why plants needs accessory pigments? Accessory pigments basically serve the same purpose as pigments in our skin. These pigments protect from the excessive ultraviolet and also may participate in energy absorption or excessive energy reflection. So those people who lives in temperate climates knows that usually during the summer all leaves are green, but in the autumn when these leaves start to die, they may turn yellow, they may turn red. And when I was a small boy, I also observed this every autumn, and I was thinking that this is due to destruction of certain pigments that would go through these stages. But actually, this is due to the fact that chlorophyll is easily destroyed, and it would be destroyed first, so we would see yellow color. So yellow color is always present here. We just do not see it because the quantity of the yellow, this accessory pigment, would be small. And yellow pigment in some plants also can be present, but also in small quantities. So this variety here in the center and here in the left would be varieties that usually are bred and selected by people for their beauty. So we artificially, by selection, increase quantity of these pigments that we consider be beautiful. And this is actually true. I like this plant. We have a lot of this type of plants here in Hawaii. Especially I like this red and yellow varieties because these varieties would look nice during any season of the year, and they do not have to bloom in order to look beautiful. By the way, the blossoms of this plant are very small, so basically we enjoy the appearance, just how they look like, the leaves, and not the flowers. So I would also use another example before I will proceed to explain how to solve the problem. Imagine that we have a wall that we paint green, and on top of green we paint yellow, and on top of yellow we paint red. And then we used, say, some type of solvent, and we wipe first layer, which is red, and we would see yellow layer. If we would use our solvent and wipe this layer, we would see initial green layer. So now we can return to our problem, and in order to solve this problem, here would be our logic. We have two accessory pigments, accessory pigment which is red, and we have accessory pigment which is yellow, and red is dominant over the yellow. And when we are saying that one variety is bred true, that means when we cross red variety with itself or self-pollinate, all the following generations, progeny, also would have red leaves. And if we would do the same with yellow variety, if we self-cross it, self-pollinate, all the following generations also would bred true and would have yellow leaves. So no variation in color would be seen in the following generation. This is what we call pure line or bred true. So this gives us information that here we have just two genes, and these two genes of course, in diploid organism can make three genotypes. So dominant allele R and recessive allele R can produce genotype capital R, capital R, capital R, small r, and small r, small r. And say this gene also may have two alleles, dominant and recessive. And once again, these two alleles in diploid organism can produce following genotypes: capital Y, capital Y, capital Y, small y, and small y, small y. Now let me talk about dominant and recessive allele. So what in this case dominant allele means? Dominant allele means that normal pigment would be produced, and what recessive allele means, that this is going to be defective allele that wouldn't be perceived as a red pigment. So this would be misshaped and wouldn't perform normally in the leaves. So if we would have a plant whose genotype would be capital R, of course phenotype would be red. If we would have a plant that would have one normal allele, one defective, we would perceive this genotype still as red flowered plant. But if both alleles would be defective, we wouldn't be able to see this accessory pigment at all. And as for the dominant Y, this type of allele would produce normal yellow accessory pigment. Small y would be defective and wouldn't be able to produce any pigment at all. So these two genotypes here would produce normal pigment, which we perceive as yellow color, and this genotype here wouldn't be able to produce any pigment at all. So which genotype would be dominant over each other? This genotype over this, or this over this, if R gene dominant over the Y. Basically, in this case, we wouldn't be able to see any dominance. Both alleles would be defective and wouldn't be able to produce pigment, and here both alleles are defective and wouldn't be able to produce pigment. So here this genotype is not dominant over this genotype. So and when we see genotype that is, for example, capital R, and the second gene would be capital Y and capital Y, R gene is dominant over the Y. So red is dominant over the yellow, and that means that in a leaf we would see two pigments, yellow and red, but we perceive it as only red color because red would hide yellow. So once again, if we would return to our problem, we are told that when red and yellow varieties were crossed, the offspring were found to have red colored leaves in F1 generation. And this is what happened here. So we have one plant that is capital R, and small y, and we cross with another variety which genotype is small r, and capital Y. So here phenotype is red, and another one phenotype is yellow. And in F1 generation, so this is parental generation, this is parent 1, this is parent 2, and in F1 generation what we got, parent 1 only can give dominant allele R, so in F1 generation we would have capital R here, and parent 2 only can give recessive allele R. So genotype would be capital R, small r for the gene R. And as for the gene Y, parent 1 only can give recessive allele, and parent 2 only can give dominant allele. So for the second gene, genotype would be capital Y and small y. So what phenotype we would see in the F1 generation. In F1 generation, 100% all the plants would be red, because this dominant allele and this would be recessive to this, so phenotype would be red, just like parent 1, but genotype would be different. So what would happen if we self-pollinate F1 generation? So basically that means that we have to cross with the same genotype, capital R small r and capital Y small y. And any of these parents, this can be parent 1, this can be parent 2, would produce the same type of gametes, because genotype is the same. So parent 1 would produce capital R and capital Y. This is going to be the first type of gametes, capital R and capital Y. The second one would be capital R and small y, capital R and small y. Third variant would be small r and capital Y. And the last variant would be small r and small y. So small r and small y. And this is going to be, say, male pollen, and gametes of the female plant would be on the side, and gametes would be the same, because genotype is the same. So female gametes would be capital R capital Y, capital R small y, small r capital Y, and small r small y. Now when we build simple Punnett square, that is going to be 4 by 4, so total 16 cells, we would be able to find all the probable genotypes and phenotypes. So here in the first cell we will have genotype which is capital R, capital Y, capital Y. Here capital R, capital Y, small y, capital R, small r, and capital Y, capital R, small r, capital Y, small y, capital R here, and capital Y, small y here. I will speed up my video. So I finished my table and save you another minute. So once again, here gametes of one parent, here on the side gametes of the second parent, and here would be genotypes that is possible in their progeny. So this is going to be F2 generation. So in F2 generation we would be able to see following phenotypes: capital R and capital Y would produce red phenotype, because dominant allele R is dominant over the allele Y. And here we also would see red pigment and red pigment here. By the way, as you see, yellow pigment also would be produced here, but red pigment just hide this pigment. We do not see it, we see only red pigment. But you have to understand that both red pigment and yellow pigment would be produced. So red phenotype of the plant here, red phenotype of the plant here, and here, and here, and here. Red phenotype here, red phenotype here, but in the next cell we see that both alleles that produce red pigment would be defective, but yellow producing alleles would be normal. So phenotype would be yellow. This genotype would produce yellow phenotype. And the same we see in the next cell, and then again red phenotype here, and yellow phenotype again. And the last cell, once again, when no red pigment would be produced, no yellow pigment would be produced, phenotype would be green, the natural color of the chlorophyll, which is always present in leaves. And when no accessory pigments would hide this natural green color of the plant, we would see that plant would be green. So as you see, we got ratios of the phenotypes as 12 red to 3 yellow to 1 green. And this is exact ratio in F2 generation according to our problem. And this is all for today. Thank you for your attention. Please subscribe for my new videos that I post almost every day. Thumbs up if you like this video. Please write your comments, questions if you have any. Share this video with your classmates, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.